All right, well, everyone's getting settled. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Kaylin. I am on the product team here at SimpleConsign, and I've actually started out as a customer of SimpleConsign. So I was using this as a product in a 3-location consignment and furniture store in Atlanta, Georgia. And I worked in the processing center as well as customer facing, running the cash register and things like that before I came over to SimpleConsign to work for the software company instead. I am here to answer any questions that you may have about the system. If there's a feature that you'd like to learn more about, or if you have a question about how something works, feel free to post it in the chat, and we're going to go through y'all's questions today, and that's our primary focus. But if no one has any questions to start off with, I can start with one of my favorite features, and we can run from there. All right, go for it. What is your question? Your credit card surcharge is showing over when you finalize end of day. Okay. Are you on the new version of surcharge or the old version? Not sure. Okay. All right. I think that question, we started November 23. All right. So that will be and I'm assuming you're talking about your end of day report. When you finalize end of day. Okay. In California, eating breakfast, my goodness, that time change really messes with me. Time zones are hard. So if we run the end of day process, oh, I have another terminal open. Let's go ahead and close this one. You can see I removed a bunch of tabs from this screen. So in case you didn't know, you can do that on the terminal side of the software. You can remove a variety of different tabs and sections. So if you want your employees to be really restricted to just entering inventory or just ringing up sales and transactions, and you don't want them to be able to do returns, you can remove all of those tabs. You can also make it so that it's just a customer lookup screen, all sorts of really cool stuff in there for that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this terminal as well. And if we hit run the end of day process, while that run end of day process will appear on each of your terminals that you have logged in. So say you have 3 cash stations, 3 checkout stations. Even though you will see the complete end of day button on all 3 of those terminals, you only need to run this process once for your entire location. So if you're a multi-location store, say you have 3 different stores, you'd run that end of day process once per store at the end of the day, generally once per day. We do have some stores that do shift work, and so they might run the end of day process at the end of each shift. So it sounds like you're saying that your over short totals are being impacted by your surcharge amounts. So short, okay. I think this test store is not configured for surcharge. So we'll want to connect offline to take a look at your specific data. But that sounds like either something's not working right, or maybe we need to update the report, but we should definitely look into that. So I'll make a note here to circle back to you so we can look at your data specifically, okay? Great question. We definitely want our reports to be accurate. All right, I think I saw another question up here. Is there a way to make all of your inventory link up to a website to sell online and not just in store? Yes, there is. We have a Shopify integration, which is available on the professional plan. And what that allows you to do is to mark your inventory. So say we've got a rubber duck right here. And we've got an e-commerce section of details. So we can click over to e-commerce. And if you mark this item as an e-commerce item, you can fill out any additional information you want. We've got some e-commerce tags, some pre-built tags, all of this information will sync over to your Shopify store, assuming you have your integration configured and set up. And then when that item sells, either in SimpleConsign or on Shopify, that data will sync with the other platform and either remove it from Shopify or leave it up, depending on your settings, and update your consignment information, make sure that the consigner receives the sale for that item, and we would track all of that information in your online sales report. And this is the information that we'd get over from Shopify. Of course, Shopify would be your source of truth for the reporting of the sales that happened on their platform. But SimpleConsign would send the inventory that you have designated as items that you want to sell online over to Shopify, and then keep up with recording them. Well, I don't have any online sales, so I can't show you that report. But SimpleConsign would keep track of those sales and make sure your inventory is up to date. So hopefully that answered your question, Ashley. If you have a follow-up question, message back and let me know. Will you and or the team be at NART's conference the end of June? That's a fantastic question, and one that I will have to check on. So I will have to get back to you on that. But great question, Aaron. Did you join us at NART's last year? Yes, you should only be able to hear audio from the host. I'm reading through chats, and some people are messaging just to the host and panelists chat, so you won't be able to see the questions coming through from them. How do we keep items in inventory that are refilled when stock runs out? Okay, so like restockable items. There's a couple different ways that you can do that. What type of store are you? Are you a traditional consignment store, a vendor mall? Vendor mall? Okay. So if you are on the professional plan and allowing your vendors to enter their inventory, then what you would do is, let's pick an account in here. Let's go with Bugs Bunny. That seems like a fun place to be. And let's make sure we have our settings enabled. Save that. And we're going to log into consigner access as this consigner, or as this vendor, as you might call it in your store type. What you would do is on the items screen, this is where you're going to enter your inventory, or view your inventory. Item entry is where you'll enter your inventory. So let's just add a test item here real quick. And we're just going to restockable. Let's say that's 10 quantity. And maybe it's clothing. We'll put whatever in here. None of these are required fields, so you can fill out whatever you'd like or not at all. And I'm going to say save and close. And then I'm going to submit this item when I'm done. So I could continue adding inventory if I wanted to. But in this case, for this demo, I'm just going to hit submit and submit this item. And if I go back to SimpleConsign now and I refresh my list, you'll see that that item has been added. So if I were to take this item now, I'm going to go sell it. I'm going to open my terminal. It's letting me know I have not run the end of day process. This is a very important process to run on a day-to-day basis. Not that we ever want to see this happen, but if there is a natural disaster or some sort of incident that impacts your store, it's that end of day process that makes sure your inventory counts are accurate, which helps you with insurance paperwork and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're preparing ourselves for the worst case. So if it does happen, we're not having that added stress. So you can see here in my test store, I do have a buyer's fee getting added on top of it. That's why that price has increased to $11. And if I sell this item, I'm just going to use these quick buttons off on the left to do cash. I don't want to see a receipt right now, so we're going to go ahead and complete that transaction. But now this item is sold out, and my vendor may want to restock this item. So there's a couple things you can do. In consigner access, your vendor can go to the items screen and they can find that item and they can click into it if they have the edit permission enabled on their profile, and they can increase the quantity in order to restock it. So you can increase it by however many quantity you'd like. And then as soon as they save that, if we go back to SimpleConsign, we'll see that that item is back to being active status with 5 quantity. If, however, you're restocking an item on their behalf, you can do that. You can click into the item and grab the SKU. And instead you would do, let's go to Bluey here. Let's restock this item. You would enter it as if it was a consigned item and the store was entering it for them. You'd search for that SKU. And this would be more common with like a traditional consignment experience. But you'd find that SKU and you'd say found my item. And then you would increase the quantity here. So by default, it'll increase by 1. If you wanted to increase by 5, you can increase it that way. Then once you're done, you can continue to restock other items by searching for them or entering a SKU, or enter brand new items that have not been in the system before. But either way, once you're done, you're hit done. And if we search for that item again, you'll see that it is back in stock with a quantity of 5. Sometimes it does not let you increase quantity. Yeah, that can be the case if the item is already in sold status. So let's find an item in sold status using this filter here. So if you click into the item, you'll see that once it's in sold status, the item is uneditable. So you would need to add it either through the inventory batch or through that restock process on the consignment, on the consignor access side. Vendor malls typically want their vendors to have full control over the inventory. So I'd encourage you to make sure your vendors have that allowed to edit permission, and then they'll be able to restock their own items. That is an issue that we have seen over the years, where vendors will sometimes not have an accurate quantity count on their items, and that can cause chaos at checkout for you. And we have a setting that can help with that as well. And this is something that we put out last fall, and we posted about it in our What's New section. But if we go to options here, and I think we put it under consignment. Yes. So specifically for vendor malls, we have allow 0 quantity consignment items to be sold. What this will do is auto restock that item. So if we tried to sell an item that had 0 quantity, with that setting turned off, so say we tried to sell this. Oh, let me grab the SKU, not the assigned ID. But historically, if we tried to sell a consignment item and it was at 0 quantity, it would try and create a new item, because the assumption was that consignment items were unique and one-off items. But with that setting enabled, again, targeted towards our vendor mall and antique mall type stores, it will instead ring it up. It'll alert you that this item has 0 quantity, but it'll still allow you to sell it. And then you can, of course, see on the history. So if we go back over here, you'll see on the history that that sale occurred and that it increased the quantity by 1 and then decreased it both for that invoice. And that asterisk lets you know that it was an automatic adjustment so that we can sell that item since it was already at 0 quantity. So you got a couple different options there to help make that process easier. So if your issue is that it does not find the SKU number, then I would encourage you to turn that setting on and see if that smooths out that checkout process for you. All right, I see Aaron back with a yes. I think that means yes, you did attend NARTS last year. Are you planning to go again this year? Is anyone else planning to go to NARTS this year? Awesome, you'll be there. Good to know. Do we have an integration with more than just Shopify, like Square? Today we have an e-commerce integration with just Shopify. So you're welcome to use additional sales channels that connect to Shopify. However, we only support the main integration to Shopify. Good question. I see one from Tanya here. The question: when we work on payout, we have artist 15 or 30%. When we have to change them to 30%, our reports. So yes, okay. So our splits in SimpleConsign, we have a couple different splits. I think we have a article written about this that I always like to reference. So let's look for split hierarchy. Okay. So there's 4 different types of consignment splits in SimpleConsign. You've got your default location level split, you have a consigner split, a category split, and an item split. Most stores, most of the time, just use this first tier. And that is set in your location level in your settings. And then some stores will also use a consigner split. So sometimes you want someone to be off kilter or off the typical split. Often we see this as family and friends. I like to call it the mother-in-law split level because that's kind of the most common question that we get around consigner split. You can also do category level splits. So that's really helpful. Like if you're a women's consignment store and you want to encourage, say, luxury handbags to come in, you could set up a category specifically for handbags and then do a tiered category split that impacts just the inventory in that category. And then you can have your split tiers set up to incentivize people bringing in higher dollar value items. So that's a really cool way to influence the inventory that comes in into your store. And then there's the item level split. So in any of these places that you set them, here's the location level. Here's the consigner split where you'd set that on the consigner profile. In the category settings, here's where you'd set the category level split. And then if you have a special item where you just want that split to be different, you can change it on the item level. In any case, where that split is set, when that item is created is where that split will stay, even if you change a split higher up in that hierarchy. If you do want to change that split after the fact or retroactively, you're going to want to refactor your consigned item splits. And there's 2 ways that you can do this. If it's on a consigner by consigner basis, which it sounds like it is for you, Tanya, then you'd want to go to the consigner profile, and there should be a refactor splits button. So after you've made the changes to that consigner profile, you'll want to hit the refactor button, and let me go find that for you. It should be in the back office, and I believe we restricted it to admin level users only, just so your cashiers can't get in there and mess with your inventory. So yeah, bulk update inventory splits right here. So once you change that split, if I was to change this from 100% to say 50, I'm going to save my profile, and then I'll say bulk update inventory splits. And then here's the other 2 split schedules that we talked about, category and item, that fall below this in the hierarchy. If you want to include overriding those, you can. You would check those boxes, and then you'd say change all consigner item splits, and that will refactor those splits on that inventory. Did that answer your question? So in summary, if you're still seeing them at 15% instead of 30%, you probably need to go back and refactor your splits and make sure that those items that were previously entered got that update. Anything entered after you made that change will have that new split percentage instead. And the second way that you can refactor splits is you can reach out to our support team. So if you're doing like a system-wide split change, which we see often at the beginning of the year or whenever, if you're doing annual contracts, whenever you renew those, sometimes we'll see stores adjust their splits. You can reach out to our support team and they can do a refactor across the entire store. Oh, if you're still seeing it even after you've refactored, that sounds like an issue that we should talk about as well. So I'll make a note, make sure that we're we've got everything working right in that process. I haven't heard any bug reports with that refactor, but it is possible that you're the first to find it. So I'll make a note here to touch base with you. All right. Hi, Mary Lee. I see what is a buyer's fee? A buyer's fee is a fee that you can configure in your settings here. And what it does, so settings, options, and then it's under fees. And you can do two different types of buyer's fees. There's tiered and percent. Tiered is the most common. Percent kind of makes your numbers look a little funky. But the purpose of it is, say you price an item at $10. If you have a $1 buyer's fee applied to that item, the customer will pay $11. The consignor will receive their split off of the $10. So the store would take that $1 off the top and then split the remaining $10 with the consignor based off of your split. So what this does is allows you to do a couple of things. It allows you to adjust your prices to account for things like the cost of hangers, the cost of storage, insurance, stuff like that. It allows you to have your prices nice and consistent. So I'm sure some of you, probably all of you, are familiar with the psychology of having different endings to your prices and how that impacts the consumer. So the store that I worked at one of our locations, we had a 50-cent end to our prices. So we would price something at $24.50 instead of $24 or $25. And at the other location, we would end the price in 98 cents. So it would be $19.98 instead of $19 or $20. Based off of how we wanted to influence the customer of that store. So you can do that here and do a buyer's fee for different value of items. So where the retail price falls. So if you didn't want to do a buyer's fee at all for the first $24, you can do that. And then if you wanted to do starting at $24.01 to $99, you could do a $1 buyer's fee. You could do $1.50, however you wanted to set it up. And then you can continue to add tiers. So if we did $99.01 up to say $150, you can do another tier. So you could make it a $250 buyer's fee, however you'd like to set it up. Now, if I was to stop my tier here, and then any items priced over $150 would not have a buyer's fee applied to them. And that's perfectly fine if that's how you want it to be configured. Otherwise, you'd continue to add buyer's fee tiers until you're happy with what your max price is. Something that we commonly see is a setup like this, where it's $0 to say $50, sometimes even $49.99, and we'd see $1. And if we did 50 to $99.99, $2, and so on. The benefit of this is you're stacking a whole additional amount on top of that split that you're getting per item. Say you just did a flat $1 buyer's fee on all of your inventory and you sold 400 items in a month, you'd cover the cost of your software without dipping into your percentage splits with your consigners. And that's the common way that we see people use it, as a way to just off the top cover additional costs that you may have as a business. So we could also do any item over that up to $50,000. You could do $4, $10. Sometimes we'll see a jump, especially when you hit furniture level pricing. And these tiers should be and can be customized on a per location basis, and they'll often be very different for furniture style stores, and we'll see these ranges be a lot larger for them as well. I see a question about sorting of the assigned IDs at the payout time. That is a good question. So what you're talking about is when you go to do a bulk payout, let's flip over to check here. Apply filters. Let's see who I have. Okay, so in my case, I have kind of custom assigned IDs, so we're not going to get that sorting behavior that you were talking about. But essentially, what you're talking about is where it'll say 1 and then 10 and then 11, 12, 13, 14. And the sorting will get a little funky. That's because it's alphanumeric sorting in your case where you're doing sequential IDs. And computers just don't do a good job of handling that. That is something that we have looked into in the past. So it is something that we can look into again. Unfortunately, I do know off the top of my head it's not a simple problem to solve, even though it really feels like it should be. But we can explore that, especially if it's causing an issue for you. So in short, there's not a good way to do that in the system today. But it is an issue that we're aware of, and it has to do with sorting based off of all of the different combinations of assigned IDs or consigner IDs that we can expect to see in the system. What are most folks using as the split percentage for basic small vintage items? And then for other categories like furniture, it really varies widely from region to region. I'd encourage you to check out other consignment stores in your area to kind of get an idea as to what the baseline is. It's been a few years since I've done the onboarding and training process for SimpleConsign. So it may have shifted some, but generally we'd see people around 50% split or 40-60 or 60-40 splits as a general rule. It would start to get different from that if it was luxury items. Then we'd start to see the store take 30% and the consignor keeps 70. So those are some good starting places. So customers don't see the buyer's fee. So the question is, when is a buyer's fee a good idea? How does it influence customers to have a surprise buyer's fee? So on the tag, so for example, this item that's $10, you'll see that it's listed as $10 right here. But if we click into it, it's got that $10 retail with a $1 buyer's fee. And what that's going to do is when you print that tag out, it's going to say $11. So the customer is not going to know that that price is any different. For example, it's not going to be a jump scare at checkout. They'll see $11 on the sales floor, and then they'll pay $11 at checkout. And let me see. I think I can do, let's do use Avery labels so that I can show you what that looks like. Let's check this item, print labels. So you can see here that it would show up as $11. And then on the screen here in the software on this consignment tab, it's going to show that $10 because this is the price that your consigners are going to see. And they'd also see the $10 in consignor access. So they're going to see the retail price, and your customers are going to see that price at checkout. So that retail plus the buyer's fee. If you were to change the buyer's fee, would adjust all old tags or just new items added? It would adjust just new items added, similar to how that split change works. The reason for that is that then if we say you updated your buyer's fee, we wouldn't want that to be, as I just said, a jump scare at checkout where the price that they see on the floor or on the already printed tag is different from what it rings up at checkout. I do believe that we have a buyer's fee refactor process that our support team could do if you are interested, but that would then impact that price that is displayed on that label or that tag that you've already printed out. So you certainly can do that, but we don't do it by default because it can cause some issues at checkout for you. End of day, when we're closing up, you count in, you've already done that closing procedure, already run your end of day process, and a customer comes in, they want to make a purchase. Kind of what do you do is the spirit of this question from Tanya. That's a good question. What you can do is you can reopen the terminal and accept their transaction. You can elect to run the end of day process again. It would be really simple because you'd only have one transaction to compare everything against. or you can let it roll over into the next day. It's going to depend on how you want that process to work in your store. The effect that it would have if you ran a second end of day is that when you go to your end of day reports in the back office, for that date range, you would end up seeing multiple options where you could pick it. Because essentially, every time you run that end of day process, you're putting a knife through that time and saying this data is completely separate from the data that comes after it. And so you're doing these big chunks, typically about 24-hour chunks of time of data of transactions. The only real hard and fast rule that I would encourage you to have in your store is that you need to be doing it at least once a day. We'll see stores who will do it once a month or once a year, and they'll have questions about why their numbers look different from what they were expecting. And the answer is it's really hard to figure that out and go back when you're looking at 30 days, 6 months, an entire year's worth of data all at once. So when I was working in store, we did the end of day process at the end of each business day, and that allowed us to easily catch mistakes or issues that came up during the day that we hadn't appropriately dealt with. One that sticks out in my mind is we had a window washer who came by and washed the windows of the front of the business, and we pulled cash out of the drawer in order to pay him, and we did not record that in the system. So the system thought that we were short however much money we paid the window washer, I don't recall. So I'll just use $20 as an example. And because we had only done that day's worth of sales, we were able to think back through the day and figure out how we were short that $20 and go in and make an adjustment so that the cash drawer knew not to expect that $20 with a note as to why. So that would be a cash in or a cash out in that scenario. So nothing terrible is going to happen if you have to run more than one end of day process in the same day, or if you let a transaction or two roll over to the next day. Really, the end of day process is targeted around updating your cost of goods, your inventory counts, making sure all of that is up to date for insurance purposes, as well as making sure that you understand the cash flow of your business. So as long as you're comfortable with the cadence that's happening there, I would say that you're good to go either direction with that. All right, and I've managed to keep you occupied and attentive for 5 minutes longer than we'd planned. I'm going to go through and take a look at a few of these follow-up questions here, but we're going to try and wrap up within the next 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, we're going to try and get to them here. But if they don't make it before we have to part ways, we do plan to do another one of these in the future, but you can also reach out to our marketing team or our support team for additional information and assistance. When sorting on the consignment tab, it does sort correctly. All right, well, that may be the tidbit that I need to figure out how to get those payouts to work. So you're saying that on this screen here, when you do this sort, it works the way that you intend or expect? It's good to know. Okay. That will help us out. Lots of good information from you all today. I hope you're learning as much from this as I am. All right, I see another question about surcharge and about debit and credit. So it sounds like you have customers telling you that it's a debit card and it's actually a credit card, and that gets them out of the surcharge. What I'd recommend there is reach out to the support team about surcharge. We may be able to move you onto an updated version where that problem I don't think would be an issue anymore. So I'd encourage you to reach out to our lovely support team. And their sneak peek, I would expect to see a webinar on surcharge coming up in the near future. So keep an eye out on our events page, which Caroline posted for us in the chat. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Such lovely questions. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and talk with everyone. We have one more question sneaking in right under the buzzer. Report. Inventory report. This looks like a question specific to your data. So I think we should, I'll take note that you have a question on this yarn ball quantity question. And we'll make sure that we reach back out to you to see if we can't figure out what's going on. Thank you all for joining. I'm so glad to get to see you all. Nice to see some new faces, some new names. Be sure to join back for our next one.